They served our country, and on Veterans Day, we honor them. But are we doing enough to support veterans' mental health? With tens of thousands of veterans living in Hawaii and many active duty service members stationed here, what unique challenges are they facing? And what barriers are preventing some people from getting the help they need? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Lauren Day. It's been a popular plot in Hollywood. Veterans and their struggle with mental health. From Taxi Driver to American Sniper, films have often fictionalized what is a real-life challenge for so many veterans. Tonight we'll be discussing the mental health resources available to veterans here in Hawaii and what gaps still need to be filled. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. As always, you can email or call in your questions. And of course, you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on our PBS Hawaii Facebook and YouTube pages. Now to our guest in studio. Denise Link is the director of the Hilo Vet Center. She's a licensed clinical social worker specializing in trauma-focused therapies, specifically combat-related and sexual traumas. She previously worked for the Department of the Army for 8 years in behavioral health and family advocacy. Jason Steele is with Veterans of Foreign Wars, or VFW. It's a nonprofit that advocates on behalf of all veterans, ensuring they are respected and receive their earned entitlements, including high-quality health care. And Dr. Ken Delano is a clinical psychologist in the VA Pacific Islands Healthcare System's PTSD Residential Recovery Program. He served as an active duty Army psychologist for 7 years. In 2014, he moved to Hawaii and previously served as clinical director at Kahimohala. Thank you all for being with us in studio. Dr. Delano, I'll start with you. Can you tell us what is PTSD and what does that look like from veteran to veteran? I know when all of us, or a lot of us, hear PTSD, as I mentioned before, we probably think of what Hollywood has depicted.
Sure. So PTSD is an acronym that stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, and it starts with something really bad happens. Okay, so that can be a car accident if you're a civilian, or childhood abuse for children. For veterans, it's often combat-related trauma. That's what I have treated the most of in the last 15 years. But it can also be military sexual trauma. There are a lot of traumas that occur in the military world that don't have anything to do with direct combat. But the first part of post-traumatic stress disorder is it's a post-trauma, right? So something really bad happens that's life-threatening, limb-threatening, that puts someone in a position where they believe their life is in jeopardy, or the life of someone close to them. So then there are several diagnostic criteria that go along with what is PTSD. So one criteria is intrusive experiences, intrusive memories, thoughts, dreams, nightmares, being very upset when triggered by something that reminds you of that traumatic experience. The second diagnostic criteria is avoidance, preferring to avoid being around anything that might remind you of the trauma and that would trigger those trauma memories and be very upsetting. So sometimes people are avoiding certain people, places, situations. They avoid topics. They avoid talking about their trauma. They avoid their feelings because the emotions themselves start to become feared. Then there are the negative cognitions and mood that go with PTSD. And this is essentially the concern that I am damaged, that I'm broken, that there's something terribly wrong with me, that I may never heal and recover, I may never be a full human being again. It's the sadness at having experienced what I experienced, and maybe feelings of guilt about, like, survivor's guilt, or shame for what I did or what I didn't do, or what I saw other people in my unit do. And then there are the arousal symptoms, and these are the ones that most of us are aware of and might be best depicted in a Hollywood movie. This is the hypervigilance, the guardedness, the inability to sleep, the inability to concentrate and focus, the exaggerated startle response. It's essentially a chronic fight or flight reaction to the world. So the person with PTSD begins to assume that everything is either a trauma or a potential trauma about to occur, and they respond and react to the world from there.
Denise, I'm sure you also work with veterans struggling with PTSD. Can you talk a little bit about what the Hilo Vet Center does and what other mental health challenges you see our veterans struggling with?
Sure. So at the Vet Center, we're also under VHA, or Veteran Health Affairs, I believe. So what we do is we focus more on readjustment counseling. So we work with a very specific group of veterans. So for our eligibility, we work with veterans who have been deployed to a combat zone. We work with veterans who have a history of a military sexual trauma, and it doesn't have to have ever been reported. I could be, or a counselor could be the first person they disclose that information to. We work with veterans who maybe worked in the medical field while they were in the military. And also, we just now expanded eligibility to work with veterans who are using their educational benefits. So maybe they're using their GI Bill, or they're in vocational rehabilitation. But we really focus on readjustment counseling. And so what that means is we're focusing on, now that you are out of the military, how can we help support you learn to reacclimate to being a civilian again, the civilian life, because it is a very different lifestyle than when you're in the military, and it can be quite challenging to get used to being a civilian again and maybe going back into the civilian workforce. So that's what we do at the Vet Center, is really help veterans get back into the groove of civilian life.
Jason, you work firsthand. I'm sure you also have a lot of friends as well who are veterans. Do you see it often where they don't know they need the help, or they don't know what resources are out there?
Yes, I do. Thank you for having me here tonight, by the way. Yes, as a veteran, I can speak to that. A lot of veterans do not know what they have when they're getting out of the service, whether it be the Vet Center or in the VA itself. What we do in the VFW, as the nation's largest combat organization, what we try to do is to help veterans to not only get their earned benefits, but to point them in the right direction when it comes to these types of things, whether it be with the Vet Center or the VA itself. Other force multipliers, I like to call it, would be Catholic Charities. Additionally, the Cohen Veterans Network, they are also out there, and that's what I said. We like to refer to all these folks as combat multipliers, helping veterans when they address either PTSD or any other sort of behavioral health issue.
Why do you think not enough veterans know about the resources available to them?
Sometimes when veterans leave the service, they have much on their mind. What they're going to do after the service. Might be family issues. The military tries to do the best they can through transitioning services to help people getting out, whether they're retiring or just doing their time and getting out. Sometimes just veterans sometimes, or service members, just have a lot on their mind. They're not thinking about these types of things, and unfortunately they start thinking about it when it's too late, or when it's starting to get difficult. And yeah, that's probably, in my estimation, why.
Denise, I'm sure you see that a lot. What barriers are keeping our veterans from seeking out mental health care?
Well, I think it's kind of varied. For some folks that I work with, it's the fear of talking about the experiences that they've had, just kind of that avoidance of re-talking about combat, or if it was a sexual trauma or something like that. So sometimes they are their barrier out of the fear of having to address some of that stuff. Sometimes it's just they don't know where to start. And so when we do have folks come in, veterans come in, at least because I'm in Big Island, our outer islands, the resources are a little bit more limited. So we always say, come to the vet center, and if we can't figure it out, then we'll get you to the place where you can get it figured out. I know Oahu is a little bit different in the sense that there's a little bit more resources available. Sometimes the barrier is finances, if that's been difficult and they've moved to a rural area and they don't have the resources to get to and from places. But if they are connected with the VA, there's definitely some opportunities to get access to transportation. But sometimes I think it's really either they're the barrier or they just don't know what's available. Yeah.
Dr. Delano,
Can I add to that?
Yeah, please.
I'd just like to, I totally agree. And I think there's a stigma around receiving mental health care. And I think that it's embedded in the military culture. It's still not comfortable to speak up about a mental health problem, and it could impact your career. And so I think a lot of people have compartmentalized that part of their life, and they don't want to talk about it, and they don't want anyone to know. And they don't want people at work to know, but they don't want anybody to know. And I think, so it's not just the military that stigmatizes mental health problems, our whole society does. And I think the idea that people are going to go talk to a therapist and that's going to make it better or different is really not clearly understood to be helpful and true. And so I think that it's sort of like, well, why would I do that? What good is that going to do anyway? And our society has not really learned that empowerment comes from being in touch with your emotions, from doing some soul searching for yourself and learning about yourself and making those changes within, that's where real power comes from. And I don't think that that's well understood, and I think for a lot of veterans, the idea that going to mental health is going to help just doesn't make sense to them.
Do you find that there are veterans who maybe years, if not decades down the road, didn't even know that they were struggling or, were facing mental health challenges?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that sometimes staying very busy and keeping that off the radar actually works. And I have seen many successful first sergeants and colonels do very well while having PTSD the whole time, and they have been told by their family that there's something up, right? That we would really like you to look at this. There's something important happening with you as a husband, as a father. But as long as it's still working for their career, they might hang on. But as their career winds down, and they're not so busy, and they're taking off their Superman suit and putting on civilian attire and looking at making that transition, that's when things really start to come up. And I see a lot of people showing up for care as they're wrapping up their military career.
I have a question that I think I'd love to hear from all of you. What would be step number one if you're a veteran watching this and you think that maybe I'm struggling with something, or maybe your spouse or a family member or friend? What would be step number one? Who do you call? Where do you go if you think you're struggling with something? Denise, you want to go first, maybe?
Well, so over on the outer islands, I usually advise that they can always walk into the vet center because there will be somebody physically there that you can talk to. And sometimes it's to be able to work through all the things you have going on. Sometimes it can be a bit easier to have someone sit with you and guide you through that. We also highly love our VSOs, because our VSOs are amazing and they really can direct them in the benefits side, or how to like advocate where we might not be as knowledgeable. This could be a biased thing, but I do say if you can go into a vet center, I think it's a really good starting place, because if we usually will know where to direct you. So yeah, that would be my suggestion.
Could you also walk in to VFW? Jason, would you also guide them as well?
Absolutely. And the acronym of VSO is a Veterans Service Officer. For all those folks out there who are not knowledgeable on acronyms. A Veteran Service Officer, whether it be with the VFW or the Disabled American Veterans, a number of the service organizations have service officers. And their job in life is to help veterans gain compensation from the VBA. And if I may back up just a second, a lot of veterans are not aware. The VA is split into 3 sections. There's the Veterans Health, which most people think about. There's the Veterans Benefits side of the house, and then there's the cemetery side of the house. And so what the service officer does is help a veteran work through all the issues with applying for a benefit package to see if they can be compensated for the injuries they received in combat. PTSD, depressive disorders, but other things, a lot of skeletal issues, that type of thing. And then what we do then is help them in that regard, and hopefully down the pike we'll get a positive response from the VBA and get them a financial compensation package, which I might say is very helpful for somebody when they know they're going to be compensated financially. Then at least they don't have to worry about financial issues, paying for things, and that they know that their nation is looking after them.
Do you find that there's a lot of veterans out there that aren't getting the compensation that they should be?
I believe there are a lot, and I don't think it's anybody's fault per se, other than the fact that a lot of veterans are just not aware of this. So what we try to do in the VFW is to advocate for them, go out and do community service events, explain what we do as a VFW to advocate for veterans, but that's what we try to do. And then also work with the transitioning folks at bases and stations, give presentations, and provide those young airmen, soldiers, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, as they're getting out. This is what the VA can provide you, and if you would like, the VFW and other service officers can be there to help you. By the way, you don't have to pay for our help, and we do it for free, and as long as you're a veteran honorably discharged, we'll help you.
Wonderful to hear that those services are available, are free, and the resources are out there. I do want to get to our viewer questions. We've got a lot coming in. This actually, the first one's a comment, and Denise, maybe you want to expand on it. Paula on Facebook says, I am grateful that the wives of vets can get help at vet centers too. Anything you want to add about what services are available to family members?
Absolutely. So, you know, one of the things, PTSD and other mental health conditions, it impacts the entire family. Right? And so we welcome our family members of our veterans to come in and be part of treatment, and to be part of the readjustment back to civilian life. I know I was a military spouse, and going from moving and PCSing to doing the civilian life again, there's an adjustment for family members too. And so that's one, I think, important piece is including family members and vet centers, and also VHA. We do like to make sure that family members are involved as long as the veteran supports and approves that. Then we're happy to have them come in. Yeah.
We have a bit of a personal question from Mike in Makiki for the veterans on our panel, if you're willing to share. Mike is curious, to the veterans on our panel, what, if any, mental health challenges have you both faced after your career in the military?
So I'm okay saying that I served mostly, when I was active duty, I served mostly in medical centers. And so I was mostly treating people with combat injuries. I was active duty during the Persian Gulf War. And so I was in the 98th General Hospital, which converted into an orthopedic and psychiatric facility during the war. So I played that role. I was also supporting families during that time. And then I was at Walter Reed after that, where the focus was really trying to figure out what was going on with Gulf War syndrome. So that was really my active duty experience, and I wouldn't say that I left the service with a mental health problem as a result of my service.
Jason, did you want to add anything? I don't want to push you to share anything you're not comfortable with.
No, absolutely. Not being a clinician like these two smart folks opposite me, but other than the deployment issues that a lot of people know about and have read about, I went through a bit of a hard time when I returned from Desert Storm. I lost a direct family member unexpectedly, and having gone through that experience, and then having the ability to turn to the VA for help, really was beneficial for me, and it was beneficial for my family to get over an immediate death upon a combat situation.
Before I move on, I just want to say thank you for your service to both of you, and also Denise, too, for what you're doing for our veterans as well. Eric in Kailua is asking, how can we as family members help someone who is struggling? What can we do to convince them that help is out there? Denise, do you want to go first, or Doctor?
I'll just say that's it. It is a challenge, and I. My nature is to want to include family members as much as possible, and they are welcome, but a lot of times it's the veteran who's not really ready for the family to be a part of their care. But I really think it's important to have, to support, to just be supportive, to try to be unattached to the outcome of it, to just talk about one's personal experience, why that's impacting, as a family member. When you do that, it hurts my feelings, and I would really like you to do something about that. Veterans don't want to hurt people's feelings. I have never met a bigger-hearted group of people than veterans. They are very concerned that something that they will do will have a negative impact on the people around them, and they don't want to do that. So I think just being clear with them that that's what is happening, and I'd really like you to get help. I'm willing to go with you. I support you. I love you. I care about you. You're my husband. You're the father of my children, and I want us to do something to make a positive change.
I would say, and all those things are definitely important. And I know for me, when I work with family members, one major piece that I try to do is educate, right? These are symptoms, these are behaviors. In fact, they're adaptions, right? These are adaptions you're seeing, understandable adaptions to really high stress traumatic events. Yes. And so what you're seeing is really kind of this beautiful ability for humans to adapt to really, really stressful situations. But now the civilian life is not that, and to make the transition can be challenging. But I have found the more that I educate about behaviors and adaptions, the more the family member doesn't personalize these behaviors. And for them to understand, don't personalize this, because this is not about you. You just happen to be the person in the room at the time when you're seeing this behavior. And I have found that that's really helpful for them not to think that this is about them as the family member, and they can kind of take a step back.
Doctor, oh yeah, go ahead.
If I may add, sometimes veterans will open up with these types of things when they speak to a fellow veteran. So what we offer as a service officer is for veterans to come in and we can talk to them, because they know that we've been pretty much doing the same thing that they've done. And then once we hear what's going on with them, not only will we try to help them with their compensation through applying for compensation through the VBA, but we can also then say, you know what, maybe you should go see the vet center. Or then we can give them numbers to see folks in the VA. Or we can go see, if you have any issues with your family, you talk to whomever, the Cohen Network. And so, again, I'd like to say that if there are veterans out there who just don't feel comfortable speaking to a civilian per se, I would like to talk to somebody that looks like them, for lack of a better way of putting it. The VSOs are there, we can listen to them with the understanding that we'll then offer them advice of where to go for what we think they might need.
Jason, are you finding a certain age range of veterans that come in to you and are seeking help, or is it all age ranges and different genders as well?
It's all age ranges, all age.
From ones who just got out to it's been years.
Correct. That's correct.
Dr. Delano, we have a question for you from Jackie from Wahiwa. My husband enlisted in the Army a few months ago. Do you have any advice on what I can do as a spouse to prevent him from facing further mental struggles?
It turns out that there are a lot of resiliency skills that service members can learn and family members can learn. It's actually really valuable and important. So there's really, when I think about the treatment that I do, I'm doing two things. I'm building resiliency, capacity to manage stress, relationships, and life. And then I'm also trying to do healing and recovery from trauma. And I'm trying to do both of those things. You don't have to wait until a trauma has occurred. Build the resiliency, build those skills. Almost any mental health professional knows how to help people build their skill set. And when people deploy, for example, with that skill set, they come back and manage it much better as a result of that.
Do you need to go see a psychologist or a therapist to build that skill set? Maybe can you give some examples of what resiliency skills are?
So it doesn't have to be a psychologist. I think, I guess I go there because of, that's what I do. But I think that there are some simple things like living in a healthy way, building healthy life habits around sleep and exercise and food, nutrition, around taking care of your health, wellness. There's just like a whole field of wellness that I think is really valuable. I think learning how to communicate under stress and be able to manage stress is a skill that people can learn. They can learn it from a psychologist, but you can learn it in other places too. And it's about being curious enough to build that capacity. So it's a tolerance, if you will, and you can build resiliency and capacity. And so you don't have to wait. So yes, I would say there are things that you can do.
Would you suggest that just for the spouses or also those getting into the Army right now?
Yeah,
or military right
so the Army teaches something, MRT. Jason, can you help me out with Master Resiliency Training? Yeah, and so the Army, and I think all branches of the service are doing similar kind of skill building. When it is presented to them in the military, it's presented in a very academic, bookish sort of way, and it's not very interesting. And whenever I talk about MRT, everybody just like groans and rolls their eyes. But the truth is, there's a lot of value in that. And so it's that kind of a skill set that is available right there at work. And then so families and the whole family can learn this. Yeah.
And I would say every branch, like for the Army, they have Army Community Service, which provides a lot of different resources. And in the Marine Corps, they have family readiness officers, and so there's a lot of different programs to be able to help build resiliency, to help kind of promote post-traumatic growth. Because just because you go through trauma doesn't mean you're going to come out with a stress disorder. You can come out with some growth there too. Mm-hmm. So.
Jason, I'll give you this next question. Nate from Eva Beach is asking, I have just received a report I have sleep apnea, and it definitely happened while I was in the Army, but I feel alone on fighting for it. Where could a veteran like me go to for help?
A veteran service organization. A service officer can speak to that veteran, provide him what the VA now provides compensation for that sort of malady that he's dealing with, and then ask for him to provide certain medical documentation and background so we can help him get the compensation that he would rate for sleep apnea. So, of course, veterans can do this online through the VA and apply for their own benefits. But a lot of times, because of the bureaucracy, a lot of times it's so massive, it can be very frustrating. That's what a service officer does. So if this veteran would like to have any help in that regard, I can provide a phone number unabashedly promote ourselves here.
Please do.
It's 433-0494. And if he calls that number, we'll call back within 24 hours and set up an appointment for him. And he can come in and speak about issues, whether it be sleep apnea, PTSD, or any other sort of problems he has with his body that we can see if we can get him compensation.
I just want to make sure we got to do the area code too now, right?
808.
808, and then can you repeat the whole phone number just in case?
433-0494 or 0495.
Perfect. I do want to read this one comment from Elaine who emailed in. I think it's important for maybe everyone on the panel to address it. On Oahu, a family member's spouse needs help dealing with her veteran husband who does not believe he is suffering from PTSD. She has asked for help but has been told her husband needs to ask for help. Your panel makes it sound easy to get help, but every vet I have talked to says otherwise. I think this is something all of us were talking about even before we got started. Can you maybe speak to a little bit about that, how there are resources, but I think you all would agree that it's not easy to get the help.
I'll start. If I may say, as a non-clinician, just as a retired Marine, it's intuitive that you join the service knowing that there's a good potential that you'll see combat. And as such, one goes through training and they go through deployments, and what is constantly faced all the time is stress, very difficult situations, and the way to get through it is to strength, inner strength. And a lot of times it's hard to decouple that feeling of going through another deployment and sucking it up, for lack of a better term. And it's very hard for a lot of veterans when they retire or get out to then decouple and then become very amenable to go in and get help. They're used to a certain type of regimented background. They're used to a certain type of attitude that you'll go in there, you'll do your job, that's your mission, and then you got to carry on with what you got to deal with. And it's very hard for veterans to say, okay, turn the switch, I can go home, and now I can open up. And it was hard for me, and I know it's hard for a lot of veterans. And so, if I may say, I'm very grateful for these two people across, because they represent all the goodness that has been provided to our veterans over the years. So thank you both.
Denise, I think you would agree there are resources out there, but it is hard for vets to ask for help.
Well, it could be that, and I will say the resources are available, but they're, kind of nationwide, there is a really high need for mental health care. And so because especially after COVID-19 pandemic, there's been such an increase in people wanting to access mental health care. And so the demand has significantly increased, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's more clinicians available. So that might be some of the challenges too that people are experiencing is a lot of mental health care has moved into the telehealth kind of realm. And for some people, there might be some challenges or barriers or some resistance to the telehealth process for mental health. So I can say that I can understand why people may find it a bit challenging or feel like this is more, if people aren't answering phones or whatever the case may be, that I can understand why they would have that perception. But there are resources. There is a lot of availability in our islands. Just to stay persistent, to not give up on your own health. That's what I always say is don't give up on your own health. Advocate for yourself.
Sarah from Waipahu is asking, how are we doing in Hawaii compared to the rest of the nation? Denise, maybe you can speak to that as far as maybe resources available and also the need for mental health services for our vets.
I don't know how we're doing compared to other states, so maybe my colleagues here might have more information. But I will say that there is a robust VHA system here. But if you are living on one of the outer islands, you may feel the strain a little bit more, having to fly over to Oahu to get some certain types of medical treatment. I don't have statistics, I don't have numbers, but what I can say is, at least my experience for the clinicians that are here, for our veteran service officers that are here, you have very compassionate, very, very passionate people who are wanting to work with veterans. But we have a lot of veterans in Hawaii, especially with all the branches being on this island. There's a lot of veterans, so there is a lot of need here.
Doctor, you've worked all over.
I have.
Can you speak a little bit to that, even if it's anecdotally?
Yeah, it is anecdotally. I don't have numbers. I would say it's very similar. I have worked all around the country, and I would just say we're about on par with what's going on in other states. I think one of the big things that's happening is it's a small island, and we are servicing the entire region. So at PRRP, we treat people from American Samoa, from Guam, from Saipan, from the Philippines, from Korea, from Japan. And from Alaska, and from Nevada, and from Arizona, and from California. It is a big, big region, and our particular situation is very unique in that regard, because from a pure numbers point of view, it may not seem like we have that many, but when you consider the barriers of the Pacific Ocean and trying to manage that, it's really quite an undertaking. If I can, I'd like to say a couple of things. If I can offer a number, I'd like to do that. So just in terms of accessing VA care, I could say walk into any of the clinics and you'll get assistance there, but you won't get seen right away. And so it might be smarter to book an appointment. And so call 1-800-214-1306. This is the Veterans Administration call center number, and it's a 24-hour number. So someone will always answer the phone and direct you in the right way. If I can also just say, there are a lot of veterans in crisis. Suicide prevention is a particular interest of mine. And there is a number that veterans can call, the Veterans Crisis Line number, 988, and then option 1. And those are really important resources I would like everybody to know about.
We did put those numbers on the screen as well as you were reading them off, so that was very helpful. Thank you so much for sharing. You talked a little bit about the region in Hawaii. Speaking of that, are there challenges unique to our veterans here in Hawaii that they're facing when it comes to mental health? This might be something that everyone might want to chime in on. Or, Doctor, maybe you can go first. Is it kind of the same across the board, across the nation?
I'd like to talk about something that is really important in psychological practice these days. It's the concept of positionality. It's identity and being sensitive to people's identities. And I think in Hawaii, with the culture in Hawaii, and then frankly, there's also when we treat folks from American Samoa or Guam there are a lot of different identities, cultures, positions that people are taking to find their way in the world. And I think that it's really incumbent on us to respect the position of the folks that we treat. I think that it's a bigger challenge here. Oahu is the gathering place, and we have a lot of identities here to manage, and I think it does make it a little bit more difficult. I think that there may be some assumptions that folks have about going to the VA, for example, that that the VA just sort of is a factory, maybe, and just sort of I'm a widget in a big system, and I can tell you, and this is echoing what Denise said, I've met the most caring, effective providers that I've known at the VA. And so it really isn't like that, but there are barriers, there's the stigma and just overcoming assumptions and expectations that are going to be important.
Denise, this question can go to you. Kevin from Kalihi says, just saw something on veterans who are female have more mental health issues. Is that true? If so, why do you think that is?
I can't speak to if it's true or not. I'm wondering if it's more females have a little bit more, there's less stigma around women going to seek mental health treatment. So I don't know if that's really an occurring because they're experiencing it more, or they're more willing to access the resource. So I don't necessarily, I think when you look at stigma and what society says is okay and not okay, I think that plays a huge piece in what gets reported, how honest people are when they're reporting certain information. But I think if people could really switch their narrative about mental health and to understand that this is an injury. Just like if you broke a leg, you would go get your leg treated. This is no different, right? And if we can kind of make that shift, then you might see that statistic shift or change.
Are you seeing different challenges that our female veterans are facing as opposed to male veterans?
So yes, I do see, I tend to see most of our female veterans that come in through our center, and primarily they're coming in because of a military sexual trauma, and oftentimes having challenges with their experience while they were in the military and how they were being treated while they were in the military, and whether it's harassment or being ostracized. I am seeing that the challenges that they are facing are a bit different than my veterans who saw combat or, so it's a little bit of a difference, but it doesn't always have to be.
Yeah. Jason, Bobby from Facebook is asking, when active duty personnel, and this is actually something you touched on a little bit earlier, but I was hoping you could expand on it. When active duty personnel come back from wartime deployments overseas, does the military prepare them for the difficult transition ahead?
I can speak for the Marine Corps. So to answer Bobby's question, I would say yes. I know the place where I retired from is Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, and we had transitioning centers there. People would come back from deployment and they'd go through a battery of tests, psychiatric, to check people if they've had TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, basic musculoskeletal checkups, those types of things. And so I think in good faith, the military does try for those who have gone in harm's way to help them transition. Do some fall through the cracks? Absolutely. But I think the military, again, I'm going to back that phrase, in good faith. I think it tries its best under the very trying circumstances of so many young servicemen going forward and coming back to help them. And if they are found in need, then what I have seen, being in a position of command back at Camp Lejeune, was that they were then transitioned into the Naval Medical Services for a variety of issues. And then if the time came for them to be going to the civilian world, they would be taken care of after they leave out. So to answer the question, I believe so. Like a lot of these things, it's not a yes and no, but I believe we do.
As someone who's experienced it firsthand, what do you think the military could do better to help that transition, or what would you like to see done to make that transition for our veterans even better?
There are some things I believe could be, for lack of better, tweaked. These transition classes that the services have. The services have TAP classes that are different. The Marine Corps would be different from the Air Force, it would be different from the Army. Generally speaking, they're the same, but in specifics, it can be, some can be a little bit more, some a little bit less. So potentially you could be looking at having a TAP class that is uniform across all the services. That is something to think about, and that might be something to address what you're talking about.
Dr. Delano, Agnes from Maui is asking, what can employers do to help veterans on their staff who they notice may be having a problem? Is it as simple as asking the employee if they need help?
I think that's a good place to start. I hear employers taking a big range of positions on this. Some don't want to hear about it, and they don't want any of that to interfere, and if so, then maybe this isn't the right place for you to be employed. Others being very compassionate and sympathetic to veterans' experience and even preferring to hire veterans. And so it's you know, there's a variety of responses that employers are giving. I would encourage the employer to be curious and to report what they're seeing, and say, have you ever thought about getting help for that? You know, that might be something that could be helpful to you here and at home.
Do you have to be careful about, you know, the language that you choose as far as, you know, what exactly to say wording-wise when approaching somebody?
Yeah, and I think that each workplace is different, and that relationship with the supervisor is different. So sometimes that would be very well tolerated, and other times, of course, not at all. And so the employer needs to know how that would need to play out in their workplace.
Denise, can you speak a little bit towards the process? When a veteran comes in, how long before maybe they can see someone like Dr. Delano or get the help that they need?
So I can only speak for vet centers. So I would say, depending on the vet center you're going to, it depends on the amount of counselors that they have available. But typically, at least here in Hawaii, we will try to see you same day if we have the ability. If not, then we'll try to get you in the next couple days, at least to touch base, to assess for risk level, to make sure you're not at risk having any safety-related issues. And then our goal really is to provide you support as soon as possible. I know at the Hilo Vet Center, if you walk in, we try our best to see you, at least sit with you for a little bit, just to talk story and make sure that we don't need to get you somewhere right now. And if we can, we'll schedule another appointment later on if it's not an emergent need.
Jason, Ben from Hilo is asking, how helpful is it for veterans who have gotten help with problems to share their experiences and improvements with fellow veterans who may be reluctant to seek help? I'm assuming this is something you have probably done firsthand to other fellow vets.
Well, yes, to answer his question, it is very helpful, in my opinion. Having the opportunity to sit across the table or to sit around a table with another veteran who, generally speaking, has gone through what you've gone through, it helps for veterans to open up. Is that always the case? No, but a lot of times that's the case. And what we try to tell veterans when they come in seeking help with their claims is that in your own way, just explain what we can do to help you. We're not feeling sorry for you. We're just one vet to another vet. Pretty much what you've gone through is what we've gone through, give or take. And a lot of times that allows them to open up. And so they're not looking at you as if you have no idea what they're talking about and you have no idea the experiences they went through. And so I think in many instances, just having a veteran talk to them and having them help them open up, that's very beneficial.
Jason, any advice to any of our veterans who are watching right now who may be struggling? What would you want to say to them?
I'd first like to say to their spouses, have patience. Be patient with your spouse. They've been through a lot, and I go back to what I said before. It's very hard to transition when you came back to open up about what they think might be a weak, because all these years they were taught to be strong, carry that pack, march an extra mile, stop whining, all these types of things that can be very, very beneficial in a very hostile environment. When you come home with that mentality, with this type of situation we're dealing with, then it's not beneficial at all. And so that's the first thing I ask the spouses, as much as they can, to be as patient as they can with their spouse, and then try to nudge them bit by bit to come see the VA, a vet center, and then indeed come see a service officer, whether it be with the VFW or any of the other organizations I mentioned earlier. And we'll do our best. Honest, we'll all do our best to help.
Jason mentioned the word nudge. As we wrap things up just a few more minutes, I want to make sure we've talked about it, all the resources out there. How do you best suggest our friends and families can nudge veterans in their lives who may need help?
I like the word being patient. I think that's important. Earlier I said just commenting on what's happening. I would say, and Denise, you were saying something similar earlier, I would say that the majority of veterans that I have treated and active duty service members that I have treated over the years are there because the family member nudged them. I mean, we just, the family is so important. And I know that it can feel sometimes like you're walking on eggshells, or that no matter what you're saying or doing, it's not working and it's not right. And I guess what I would say is that gentle, loving, caring nudge to, you know, a request. I'll go with you. This is for all of us to get better. We all need to figure this out. I can tell you that most of the time it's the family member that brings them in, and then the veteran does not want to include them in the treatment. That's just been my experience. No matter how hard I push on that, that's just not where they are just yet. But they do go back and tell their spouse that they are sorry, that they are grateful, and that they're ready to turn the page.
Denise, any last tips when it comes to nudging our veterans who may need help?
I think, you know, if you're a family member supporting a veteran, it's kind of overwhelming and radical acceptance of that person, and really coming from a place of non-judging and seeing that this is an injury, that there is suffering that is being experienced right now that might not be able to, there might not be an awareness to it. But I think the key, it really is patience and understanding. The more that you can be accepting and loving, but also wanting to encourage, you know, their ability to not suffer. I think that's a good kind of framework to work in through your own mind, because it kind of helps how you're going to lead that conversation.
I'm assuming you see a lot of family members that do their research on what resources are out there, and those family members are the ones that say, "Hey, this is available. Let's go seek help."
Quite often, yes, yes. But I have to say, is a testament to how important family members, spouses are to supporting our veterans.
I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. We just have a few minutes. I want to read this one comment, and then I also want to go over the phone numbers that we mentioned and the resources. Mark from Manoa says, "Thank you to the panel and PBS Hawaii for this timely show and thinking of our veterans this week." So I want to say thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you for your service. Any veterans out there watching, thank you for your service as well. As we wrap things up, Jason, do you mind sharing one more time that resource and the phone number? Can you explain just really briefly what it is and that phone number one more time?
Sure, and if I can provide a quick email address.
Sure, really quickly.
bfw.vbahon@va.gov. And basically, when you're sending an email to that address, it is coming to the service officer for the VFW. And we'll answer that, and we'll be able to help veterans with their claim. Lastly, the phone number is 433-0494 or 0495.
Perfect. We also have two other phone numbers that I want to make sure we put up on the screen one more time. We've got the Veterans Crisis Line. That number is just 988. Again, Veterans Crisis Line, 988, and press number 1. We also have the Pacific Islands Healthcare System. That number that you can call is 1-800-214-1306. Again, 1-800-214-1306. Mahalo to all of you for joining us tonight. Of course, one more thank you to our fabulous guests in studio. We have Denise Link, Dr. Ken Delano, and Jason Seal. Thank you again for being here. Next week, the annexation of Hawaii. More than 125 years later, it continues to be fiercely debated, and a push for sovereignty remains. Why knowledge of the history matters. Please join us then. I'm Lauren Day for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Have a great night.